Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of our new talk show, Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. We're here with Alfred Jordan. He's the assistant coach at University of Little Rock. He is a native of Harlem, New York, a graduate of Clark Atlanta University. Al, thank you for joining us. So my first question is, what motivates you to be successful in the game of basketball?
I grew up around basketball. Coming from New York City, all you see is basketball courts left and right. And my dad, a lot of people know him in New York. He was one of the original announcers in Rucker Park. So, like the basketball was put in my hand at 3 years old. And, I used to go up to the park all the time with him. And, just being around him and watching how he had the crowd moving and things of that nature, it really was something that was inspirational to me. And, I took a different route with it as far as coaching, and my hunger for the game is helping to recruit kids and winning, and of course seeing them graduate. So that's what motivates me the most, is seeing our student athletes either one graduate or two become pros.
So talk about what's Al Jordan's coaching philosophy.
I'm a pretty young coach, so one thing I think is one of my biggest philosophies is probably making sure you have a good relationship, and if a kid comes in our program, them leaving better as a man than they came. In basketball, a lot of people focus on just making these kids better, but one thing I learned from working with Coach Walker is that you got to prepare these guys for the real world and life after basketball. And seeing some of them kids come in at 18 and leaving the program 20, 21 years old, and just listening to the way they talk after they leave the program and the way they carry themselves, as far as pants being on their waist, not walking around with hoodies and things on of that nature. It's about the growth and the maturity part of basketball too.
So talk about growing up in Harlem.
Harlem was always fun, and having a dad like I did, he was somewhat of like an icon in New York, and a lot of people knew him, and it was always good to be known as Al Cash's youngest son. And I loved it. I wouldn't trade my experience of growing up in New York for anything. I really think it taught me a lot as far as things that you don't learn in school. I learned in the streets in New York, and it helped me adapt, because I went to college all the way in Atlanta without even seeing the campus. And, I just think my upbringing of being able to make it in the city, it taught me how to navigate when I was in Atlanta and things of that nature. And, just that upbringing is second to none. It's just that mentality of, like a hustler mentality, and always trying to grind and work harder than the next man.
So talk about EBC. What you saw a lot of great moments as a young kid. Talk about the atmosphere that was always there.
Fear is second to none. I know Dykeman is the new era, the new wave right now in New York City, but it's different places that paved the way for things to evolve. And street ball definitely started in the Entertainers Basketball Classic. One of my father's good friends, rest in peace, Greg Marius, he was the commissioner. And I got to see all my favorite players when I was growing up. I got to meet a lot of them. Like, I got to see Allen Iverson in his prime. I got to meet LeBron James, although he didn't play. I got to see the late, great Kobe Bryant play up close and personal. So, for me growing up, the EBC was my NBA. For those that couldn't make it to NBA games and things of that nature, I got to see them in a whole nother light. I got to see them with their hair down, coming out and really being themselves. And, they came to the parks and they played like it was game 7 in the NBA finals. Like, I remember when Kobe came up there and played, it literally started raining. And when they was calling the game, Kobe had just started getting into the game so much, he was telling them, man, it's just a little bit of drizzle. But of course, they was telling him that, if you got hurt out here in the park, it'd be a lot of people that would have been mad at them. But, the Entertainers Basketball Classic, it paved the way for a lot of guys to come back home that was overseas, to stay in shape and to get their crack at playing against those pros. And for some guys that didn't, unfortunately get the chance to play on the professional stage, they treated the Rucker like it was their NBA. So, I used to love going up there, man. I wish it could go back to the old days, how it used to be up there.
If there was one great moment that you had, your one favorite moment of seeing a game at the Rucker, what would it be?
I would definitely say it was the vacant lot, and I was a vacant lot at Terror Squad. I know it was a game when it was A-Bud and
Pardon us for the technical difficulties. All right, Al. So you can continue.
I'm just getting to see some guys like A Butter that grew up, older than me, and I watched him play all over the city. Just to get the chance to see him play against some of them NBA guys and really go at them like he was in the NBA. That was big for me. And when I was younger, I saw that if it wasn't the NBA route, it was other ways that you can go and have an effect on the game of basketball.
So talk about you went to high school at Cardinal Hayes. Talk about that experience.
And it was kind of funny because I started off at LaSalle Academy my freshman year. And unfortunately, when the events happened in 9/11, I was kind of like shook, to be honest, to ever get back on the trains and to go back downtown. And so, I lived on 145th and Lenox, which was right across the bridge from Cardinal Hayes. And I didn't want to go to Rice High School because I had too many friends that I didn't want to have to compete with on the court. So I said, I wanted to go to Hayes and actually get a chance to play against them. And it was just so funny just being one of the lone Harlem guys in the school with a bunch of Bronx guys. You can just imagine how weird and awkward it was at first. But then I'll never forget my first time I had a gym class and I got to hoop with everybody. And after my first gym class, the next immediate period was lunch. And by that time, I knew everybody because, real basketball players respect real basketball players. And so, it was like one of those unwritten laws. And, I loved it after that. I actually used to hang out in the Bronx a lot. And it was just funny, because how sometimes they had a comparison between Harlem and the Bronx. But I got a lot of good friends that I met in high school that to this day, they're like my brothers and they're from the Bronx. So I actually enjoyed my 3 years at Cardinal Hayes.
Mm. So how far did you go during your time there?
I know my junior year, we played in the city finals against I can't remember who it was. I'm not sure if it was St. Joe's, but I know we were led by a Brooklyn guy, Kamadre O's, that eventually played at St. Peter's, and we went to the city championship, and it was a real fun experience.
What year was this?
That had to be 2002, 2003.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you graduated 2003.
My junior year when we went to the city championship.
Okay. Talk about, the feeling of playing in the city championship game.
Oh, there's nothing like that, especially when you're playing in them big atmospheres. Excuse me. And for me, it was second nature, and I was used to it just from growing up in street ball and playing in those hostile environments. If you can survive street ball, you can play in Madison Square Garden, if you ask me. So those type of things didn't faze me. I was a junior, so my minutes were pretty limited. It was really a senior game, and I enjoyed every step of it. Kamadre put on a show for us that game. I think he started in the first half and only had 2 points and ended the game with about 34. And he scored 32 points in the second half, but we just came short by, I believe it was like 3 points.
Okay. So from there, you go to Clark Atlanta University. Talk about the experience of being at a Black college.
If I could, I would preach to our people, if you could get the chance to go to an HBCU for at least 1 year out of your college career, to do it is nothing like an HBCU experience, if you ask me. Just the love and the family atmosphere, I wouldn't have traded that experience in for anything in the world. It's a lot of people that I met on that campus that to this day I keep in contact with. And, when we get the chance to go back for homecomings, like the love when you're seeing all those old faces is pure and it's genuine. And it's nothing like being able to feel the love from people that was around in your era. And, when you're in college for 4 years, you touch so many different people because when you come in as a freshman, you have those 3 classes of sophomores, juniors, and seniors that's older than you. And then when you become a senior, you have those younger classes of juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. And so that network was just so big. And the people that I met to this day, it's like a family. And, we have chances of checking in on each other. And, when I was coaching there, it was good. And I had a lot of alumni that used to come to the games and support it because they got the chance to see a familiar face.
Mm. Talk about the SIAC conference. What was the competition like there?
Conference, I tell people all the time, although it was a Division II league, I mean, man, we played against some top tier talent. Like it was a kid that when I was actually my last year at Clark, his name was Tyrus Walker, who ended up making the Knicks G League team. And so, I tell people all the time, just because it was labeled Division II, some kids just ended up there. That may not be where they started their career. And, some things might have happened in their lives that, they had to take a step back. But them kids, I mean, some of them were pros in my eyes.
So what did you major in when you went to Clark Atlanta?
I got my degree in business with a minor in marketing.
So talk about, the transition from playing to coaching there.
Well, I would definitely say for the first year or two, it probably was the most difficult for me because, of course, when I was making that transition, I literally was coaching some guys that a year ago I was in clubs with. So, it's just a harder, it's a harder experience when you go from like actually having these guys as your friends and your teammates and the trials and tribulations you go through together on that level, and then to turn around and be in a position of power to try to get them orders. It was kind of like weird at first, but eventually it was an easy transition after that, because I was a walk-on. So, as a walk-on, I always worked hard because I knew I had a lot of things against me because I was more so a liability than an asset by not being on scholarship. And, my work ethic was something that a lot of those guys respected. And, when I was on a team, I was one of the biggest cheerleaders because I was real with myself. I knew the only way I would get in games at times is if we was up 20 or down 20. Of course, nobody wanted to get in games when they were down 20. And so, while I was on the bench, I used to be one of the biggest cheerleaders, a coach. And that's what actually helped me make the transition into coaching because the guys were so used to me and me being in the gym, not minding rebounding for them. There was times in games when we're being in timeouts and they're coming to me as a player, like, back then they called me Cash. They're like, Cash, when I'm not doing right on my shot. And, I would tell them little small things. And our head coach at the time, Darrell Jacobs, he kind of noticed that a little bit. And, I went from sitting at the end of the bench that after the last coach, I was sitting next to the last coach. So, I was legitimately a player coach at the time. And, of course, when I got the opportunity to work with Coach Darrell Jacobs, everything else from then been history.
So how long did you coach at Clark Atlanta?
I coached at Clark Atlanta for 8 years.
So talk about, coaching under Coach Walker, the first time that you got to coach under him.
The first time I got to coach under Coach Walker at Clark Atlanta, it was like a real shell shock experience for me because he came to us as a high profile coach, after being a head coach in the NBA, playing in the NBA, being a lottery pick and winning an NBA championship. I already in my mind thought he was going to come in very high sedity and, look down upon what we had going on at an HBCU Division II school. But when I tell you it was the complete opposite, I mean, it was almost like a blessing. That man was so selfless that it made no sense. And he was probably one of the easiest people I ever got the chance to work with. And, to this day, I've been learning so much from him. And our relationship is very, very, very strong. Although I am a coach coach for him, it's definitely like a father and son relationship. He makes sure that I stay on my P's and Q's, and he sees my potential and he holds me accountable, which I like about him so much. And he treats me just like everyone else on his staff, although I've been with him the longest. And the relationship is just perfect. And when I say he's a worker, he is a hard worker. I used to try to get up early and make sure that I could beat him to the gym. And there was so many days I would be upset with myself when he did beat me. And I was kind of upset this year at Little Rock that we didn't get the chance to finish the season because we were well on our way to the national tournament. And I think that was going to be the world's chance to get to meet Darrell Walker, because I'm not saying this because I work for him currently, but he's a basketball genius. And I do believe that if you put him on the stage with some of these, veteran coaches that have been doing it for a long time on the NCAA level, they're going to be in for a surprise and for a shot. And, the proof is in the pudding what he did his 2 years while he was at Clark Atlanta with myself. And then for us to go to a mid-major program and turn them from a 7-win team to a 21 regular season championship team only in 2 years, that's just an ode to him and, the things he does with them X's and O's.
So how did it feel taking the Panthers to the NCAA tournament 2 straight years with Coach Walker?
It felt good. It was like a storybook story. I mean, you couldn't rewrite that. You couldn't make up what we went through and how we just prevailed. And the team that we had the first year, I mean, I love those guys because when I say we didn't have anyone on that team bigger than 6'7", I know Damian Davis, if he sees this, he going chew me out because he swears he's 6'8", but he ain't taller than 6'7". And once Coach Walker realized that height might be a problem for us as far as rebounding against bigger teams, he decided to turn the tempo up, and we just were in better shape than everyone. And the way we ran teams out the gym was just amazing that first year. And then, the second year, after winning the championship, the second year it made recruiting for myself easy because I was able to pitch a championship winning team, a former NBA coach, and being in the city of Atlanta doesn't hurt at all. And so, that second year, from November all the way into the end of the year, we was top 25 the entire year. And I think we went as high as 14 in the country. And then we had a streak when we had won like 14 out of 16 games. And during this streak, our arguably best player didn't even play. He tore his ACL in early December. And, to win as many games as we did without him, it was amazing. And we always thought, if we would have had Austin Donaldson, I mean, sky could have been the limit that year. But, everything happened for a reason. Them guys fought. We made it to the conference championship again. Unfortunately, we came up short. But, we had such a good regular season record and being ranked in the country, we had got that automatic bid.
So talk about when getting that job at Little Rock. Like, how excited were you that Coach Walker took you with him?
The type of guy Coach Walker is. I wasn't even on campus, and when everybody was trying to politic and see if I was going to get the Clark Atlanta job, Coach Walker was already telling everybody, no, Coach Jordan's coming with me. And, it's sometimes in this business, you get head coaches that do make that jump, and when they do make the jump, they feel like they have to get some guys that have already been on that level for plenty of years. And Coach Walker showed me a different type of loyalty that I've never seen in the business. And, that's why I've been working and running through walls for him because, he opened up my career. Now being a mid-major assistant coach, it opens up my market for me as far as, jobs if I ever wanted to venture out and try to do my own thing. And, I put the work in and the work showed, and he loved everything that I've done and have continued to do for him. And, it's one of those good stories, similar to Nola Richardson and Mike Anderson. Nola Richardson was a long-time Arkansas Razorback head coach, and his long-time assistant coach was Mike Anderson, who's now the head coach of St. John's. But, that relationship that they had kind of reminds me of the relationship myself and Coach Walker has now.
That's a great analogy right there. So talk about year one, on the Division I level. Like, I know you guys took the lumps. How tough was that season?
Myself, it was tough because, one, I was away from my family, and then two, you go from two national tournament teams and winning 20 games back to back. It was really, really tough. But we knew the freshman class that we brought in, that we threw in the fire from day one and let them all start pretty much from the first game all the way to the end. We knew by letting them go through their trials and tribulations young that in year two they would mature. And we also had some scholarships we didn't want to use because we got the job, so late. And we wanted to make sure in year two we could actually bring in our guys. And, the patience and that decision by Coach Walker paid off and paid dividends for us in year two.
So how was it coaching Rajon Tucker? He was an athlete with a lot of athleticism. I know you guys only got to have him for 1 year. How was it coaching him?
Coaching Rajon was fun. I mean, if you ever seen Rajon on the court and off the court, one thing you'll always see that kid doing is smiling. He was such a good kid. He was a good leader for us. And, his first 2 years, he played college basketball. I believe he averaged 9 points one year, 8 points the next year. And then, he got into Coach Walker's system and he averaged 20 for the year. And, it was certain times during the season, I would look at him and I was saying, he definitely had the potential to be an NBA player. His physique, athleticism, and some of the things he did in games against sometimes when we played against the high major teams, the potential was always there. And, I tried to plead and beg with him to give us one more year because, I knew the recruiting class we had coming in this past season. And it was no doubt in my mind, had we had Rajon on top of that 21 team roster that we had, I mean, it could have been even scarier than what we did this year.
How does it feel to say that you coached a player that went to the NBA?
You know, for my son too, who's 7 years old, and he's always around me. He's always been around my players, you know, since I've been coaching. And you know, now for him to go on NBA 2K and to be able to pick one of the actual players that he knows, it's like a great relationship that couldn't, in a bond that couldn't be broken with me and Rajon. Like Rajon FaceTimed me like 2 days ago, and it was just a, hey, how you doing? He wanted to talk to my son. So, you know, the NBA part was good, but the relationship part was even better.
So now, talk about the first recruiting class when you had Marquise Noel and Damani Johnson.
First recruiting class that I was able to help bring in, we had 4 freshmen, 3 of them which I recruited: Marquise Noel, Kamani Johnson, Horace Wyatt, and Coach Charles Baker brought in our big man, Nicola Merritt. And you know, the freshmen that first year, they all had some games where they showed signs of a very, very bright future. And it was fun to see them guys, you know, going there in Georgetown to give Georgetown a scare of their life. You know, we took them all the way into overtime, and Big Nicola, I mean, if you ask me, he was the best player on the court that day, not named Matt McCullum. And it was just fun. You know, they were young. They definitely got coached hard. Coach Walker held them accountable for everything. And, you know, the way he coached them, I think it prepared them to make such a big jump in year 2. And, you know, the guys got used to him. And, you know, one thing about him, he doesn't play the radio, and he corrects all mistakes. And I think that's good as a coach. You know, that's something that you can't do, is that when you're coaching young guys, if you let them continue to build up bad habits, it carries over. And Coach Walker nipped a lot of that in the bud in the first year, and the guys brought in, and the jump that they made in the second year was tremendous. I mean, Marquise was first team all conference, run up for player of the year. Kamani was third team all conference, had 2 games where he scored 30 points, was player of the week a couple of times. And Nicola came back second semester of year 2, and he had some games that he played out of his mind again for us.
So this past year, you guys had a record of 21-10. You went 15-5 in the conference. Like, how big was that season for you guys?
Coach Walker was telling us in the summer that we was a tournament team. And I think that was very, very good that he did that, because he instilled that in them guys' heads from the first day that they walked on campus. And that was always what he told us in the coach inside of like the coach's war room, when we broke down film, when we watched our up and coming opponents, and we watched some teams that were quote unquote projected to go to the tournament. You know, Coach Walker always said to us, like, it's no doubt in his mind that we would be a tournament team. And, you know, as the year went on, the guys started to see it. The guys started to get the confidence, and they took on their head coach's personality. And I think that was very, very big, because, you know, Coach Walker, if you ever look at his playing days, he was a nitty-gritty guy on that defensive end. And that was something that we picked up this year that matched the offense that we had, because scoring was never an issue or worry for us. It was how good we were going to be defensively. And it was times when we turned that defensive switch on, and we looked like one of the scariest teams in the country. I mean, even right now to this day, we're still trying to find games in our schedule, because a lot of teams are telling us we're too good. So, you know, it's kind of good to hear that a little bit, you know, although we like to go toe-to-toe with some of these bigger schools. But, you know, everything will happen for a reason, and things will play out the way they're supposed to.
So expand on that. Like, now that you guys had a really big record, like a really good season, why is it that certain schools don't want to play you guys? Do you feel like it's for a chance of you guys beating them?
I don't know if you ever pay attention to Scott Van Pelt and when they do Sports Center and they talk about, you know, buy games. Buy games is normally when the high major teams, you know, they pay money for mid-major teams to come in there and supposed to lose those games. It's supposed to be blowouts in everybody's eyes. But, you know, the parity in college basketball has changed so much, where I feel like there's some mid-major teams that are just as good as some of these high major teams. We just don't get the chance to play them. And, you know, to pay schools, you know, anywhere between $80,000 to $100,000, and for them to come in and beat you, you know, it's not a very good look on their end. So, you know, to a certain extent, I can understand why they're a little bit hesitant to play us. And, you know, I love it. I don't mind having that reputation as a scary team. And, you know, I think it's good for our guys to know that, you know, now that you may be the hunted and not the hunter anymore. And, you know, to wear that target on our back, our guys have accepted it. And, you know, again, a lot of that starts with the guy that's at the head of the bench. And, you know, when you got a coach that's cooler than the other side of the pillow in crunch time, I mean, it makes guys even cooler, you know, than that. So, you know, I enjoy it.
Now, talk about, unfortunately, you guys had a wonderful season, like we talked about, but it got shut down because of COVID-19. Like, how hard was it, to not play in the conference tournament and hopefully make the NCAA tournament because of that situation?
It was tough because, you know, the way things played out, you know, we were able to clinch the regular season championship the game before the final game of the season, which automatically gave us a double bye. Excuse me. And we were actually on our way to New Orleans to play in the semifinals. And we actually thought that the brackets was favorable for us. It actually, excuse me, would have been, you know, one of four teams that we played during the year, and we beat all three of the other teams that were left standing. And we were going to respect our opponent, but we weren't worried that it was an unwinnable game. And we were only 30, 40 minutes down the road when the NCAA started canceling conference tournaments. And then we got the call from the Sun Belt that they were going to put it on hold. And it was tough because, you know, although we do have everyone coming back, sometimes history can rewrite itself and things aren't as easy. You know, we won't sneak up on teams this year, which doesn't bother us because we'll be prepared either way. But just to be that close to your goal, it was tough. But, you know, now our goal and the motto is going into the next season is unfinished business.
Now, talk about, what's going on with the team now. Like, how are you guys keeping in touch with them? Like, what are you guys telling them during this whole COVID-19 pandemic?
The biggest thing that we've been preaching to them is academics, because without academics, it doesn't matter what happens next fall or next winter if you're not eligible. And grades are actually coming out this week, and we've been very, very proud of what our guys did remotely. And, you know, it's kind of hard for some guys to take online classes and not have a coach or a proctor and study hall over their shoulder, making sure that they're actually doing work and not on YouTube or something of that nature. So, you know, it actually was a lot of group texts and a lot of phone calls, a lot of FaceTimes, just to make sure that our guys were doing everything that they needed to do. And I definitely say I can go on record and say I'm proud of the way that they handled themselves throughout this pandemic inside of the classroom. And I know as far as working out, it may be tougher than others. You know, no one really wants to go out, especially people in some of the harder hit cities as far as like Chicago, LA, and New York. You know, it's kind of tough to work out. And, you know, so whenever we get them back, we know as coaches, we just got to ease them back into getting into shape. And, you know, again, Coach Walker does a good job of monitoring their bodies and make sure we don't put too much wear and tear on them. Because, you know, normally in the summertime, that's when players are made, and in the winter is when teams are made. So, you know, it's going to be a grind for us, but I'd rather be in this grind with a team that's coming back and already know the system, opposed to replacing 4 or 5 pieces to a puzzle.
How hard is it, not being able to recruit during this pandemic?
That's one thing I take pride in is recruiting. You know, not only just bringing in good players, but also building those good relationships with a lot of high school coaches, JUCO coaches, and then my other colleagues that are Division I and Division II coaches. And it's tough. Like, I was looking forward to the Final Four, which actually was going to be in Atlanta this year. And, you know, not to be able to get out and to be able to touch coaches and learn from them and just network is the toughest part. And, you know, one of our other assistant coaches, Coach Preston, you know, we talk every day, and he's a worker, and it's been killing him, and he's been itching to get back out on the road and do individual workouts. But, you know, everything happens for a reason. It's unfortunate that we have to go through this pandemic, but, you know, for a lot of us, it gives us a chance to step back, to be with our families, and to also perfect our craft and get better. I really like what a lot of other coaches have been doing, and even yourself, as far as the Zoom interviews and webinars and things of that nature. It gives us all a chance to sharpen our tools and everything of that nature. So, you know, I've been using this as a learning experience more than anything.
So, as you've seen the Last Dances out, talk about, Coach Walker was a part of the last team for the first three-peat. Does he ever talk to the players about playing in the NBA and playing with Jordan?
It's crazy because when I first met Coach Walker and him being old school, he has one of those ringtones that when it rings, it'll say someone's name. So literally, and this is a true story. In my first week of working with Coach Walker in my office, being next to him, I heard Isaiah Thomas call him. I heard Alex English call him. I heard Bernard King call him. I heard Michael Jordan call him. So, one thing I could say about him is the relationships that he built while he was in Patrick Ewing. I can't leave out Patrick Ewing. That was his rookie when Coach Walker was a vet and Pat Ewing was drafted to the Knicks as a rookie. Coach Walker basically took Patrick Ewing under his wing, and they have a very, very great relationship. But Coach Walker and Michael Jordan are, I would say, very, very good friends. When he calls them, he'll either pick up or call him right back. He actually gave us sneakers while we were at Clark Atlanta and sneakers to our team while we were at Little Rock. And I mean, this is why you even calling me Coach Walker. You can have whatever you want. Just call my peoples. I mean, that's the type of relationship him and Michael Jordan have. And he preaches to us all the time in practices. He tells our guys, he's like, I play with the greatest. There's nothing y'all can really tell me. I watch the greatest player of all time come in and every day and bring it and literally compete at the highest level. And it's funny that he said all of that, and then this documentary came out, and you sit up here and you watch Mike work as hard as he did. And I think it's really touching home with a lot of our guys to hear the stories prior to the actual documentary and to actually see Michael Jordan challenging his other guys in practice, beating them in sprints. And, I had some text conversations with some of the guys on our team that said, this documentary is really hitting home for them, and the work ethic that they plan on bringing next year and the mindset, I'm really looking forward to it.
So if you could go back in the time machine to little Alfred Jordan, what would you tell him, to that little kid at Rucker Park?
Definitely to work on your jump shot. Of course, going to Rucker Park growing up, everything was about the oohs and the ahs and breaking people down. And that was something that I used to like to do a lot. I used to like to, definitely put the ball on the floor, get in the lane, throw passes, throw a little float up. But if I can change anything, I would have definitely told myself to work on your jump shot. There's no reason that you're a lefty and you're probably one of the worst lefty shooters of all time.
Final question. What's next in the future for Alfred Jordan?
Continue to grow as a coach. Whatever comes my way, I'll be ready for it. I definitely think I've been groomed under Coach Walker to eventually go on and do my own thing and be a leader of my own program. But until that happens, we have unfinished business that we plan on taking care of this up and coming season. And I also plan to continue to hit the recruiting trail and try to get as many guys that's fit for the program and give guys a chance to either pursue their dreams of being pros or get those degrees, or if we're even better, if we can get both. So, just growth and continuing to write my own story and my own legacy.
Thank you, Al. It's been a pleasure having you. I can't wait to see you on the recruiting trail if and when there is an AAU season. Hopefully it's in August. But I'm happy for you that you achieved everything that you set out to do. And I can't wait to see you on the bench very, very soon.
I want to say keep doing what you're doing. You're giving young coaches like myself an outlet to get the chance to get out there for the world to see some of the smaller guys in the business that's trying to come up. And, one day, it's no doubt in my mind, I'm going to see you on TV giving them NBA guys interviews and stuff like that. So, hopefully one day we could both meet each other at the top.
Indeed. Well, that caps episode 2 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. Thank you, everybody. Look out for the next episode. Peace.